And at lunchtime, everybody will come under the tree, all the chain gang, the guards, the guards and everybody. And my grandmother would tell me to go pump a bucket of water and give them water. So we had a dipper in the bucket, so I would go out and give them water. Of course, here in my picture, what I'm talking about, even in among African Americans and whites, especially at that time, they made sure that they kept segregation laws.
Hi everyone, we're here with Jerry, one of our special artists, part of Invitational for 2020. And Jerry, it's nice to meet you. And let's start off easy. What was the moment you realized you were going to become an artist?
Well, the moment I realized that I was going to become an artist was, again, I was brought up in the segregated South around the 60s. And at that particular time, on cold winter nights, the whole family, we would sit around the heater and everybody had a pencil in their hand or a piece of coal, or a coal was like a charcoal stick, but we would burn the coal. The coal was like a big piece of charcoal and you could draw with it. Okay, and so we didn't have the luxury of having an art store nearby anywhere. So we would take brown paper bags and we would draw on the brown paper bags. And oftentimes when we would draw what we saw around us. And so we did this all the time. And I had an uncle who was a great artist, and I would sit under him and try to copy everything that he did. And then, like later on, my grandmother had this old Bible, this old tattered, worn Bible, and it had pictures of Jesus, you know, some of the great masters painting in there. And so what I would do, I would sit down at night and I would try to copy those pictures to the exactness. I wasn't thinking about being an artist, but I knew that I could draw. And that was very powerful for me because all of us, that's what we did. We passed the time away drawing and telling stories, and I didn't realize what I was doing was preparing me for this very moment right here, the narrative painting.
Hi, Jerry. Could you expand on the narrative of your work and where these stories stem from? Of course, you've already told us that you did grow up in the South, but did you possibly just collect all these stories, or have you researched any?
Well, you know what? I wanted to understand exactly, I know where I came from, but I wanted to understand the period of life I was in as growing up. I had so much fun as a child growing up in the segregated South that I really, not that I didn't notice the disparities, but it never bothered me. But as I started to grow up, I started to notice we had to do things differently. And because what I did, I followed what all the other black people, the older black people, I followed their norms. And I never questioned it. But as I got older and started to think about my life, I said, you know what? I need to paint these images so I can see where I was in the span of the history of time. And so that's how these narratives came about. But these narratives came about because of actual events that happened in my life.
This is more of a tougher question, Jerry.
Okay.
But how do you view your work in the current political climate?
That's an excellent question. My work right now, first of all, my work talks about segregation. It talks about the inequalities for African Americans. It talks about all the things like the civil rights movement, fighting for civil rights, fighting for equality, fair housing, jobs, and brutality from the police officers. And right now, fast forward, we see this whole thing starting to happen again. We're talking about the same thing back in the 60s, and here we are in the 2020, and those same things are being talked about right now. I just think that it has come full circle. And again, in my narratives, in these narratives, that was just something that when I looked at my own work, that's what I garnered from what I was painting. And so again, I think right now, as an artist, I think that it is incumbent upon me to continue to, to beat the drums of equality and to continue on fighting for the injustice of this system and trying to make this world better. And I think we artists have a responsibility to do that.
We do. We really do, and I think that's a great way to look at it, actually. All right, Jerry. Well, it was a pleasure meeting you.
It is my pleasure.
Mm-hmm. And we're excited to have you a part of the Invitational.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. We wouldn't have this happen if it wasn't for you guys.
Oh, my goodness.